name is Malcolm, and I'm the Chief Advisor for Technicorum Group, and we do everything there is in the digital asset space. And for me, the Metaverse Journey started 6 years ago, and I was an advisor to several projects from 2017 to 2018. At that time, it was not called a Metaverse, right? It was called a virtual reality. And if you go back maybe 15, 20 years, then there are all the massively multiplayer online games like RTS, real-time strategy, or role-playing games, World of Warcraft, these kinds of things, or like Second Life. So these were the actual origin of VR environments and Metaverse, right? But of course, after Facebook came out and rebranded themselves as Meta, then they came out with the term Metaverse. So nowadays, we all call it Metaverse. Right, so Metaverse would be all the other types of realities like VR, AR, XR, MR, etc. Right, so we're here to chat about what's the potential of Metaverse, and it's going to be free form. And so Alvin and Alvin and our group has already done a joint venture where we have a Metaverse company, and we are doing various things in it. So we were here to let you know what we see as the potential. Because, of course, I'm sure a lot of you have heard Metaverse was super popular like 1 year ago, and then now it seems to be a gone narrative because Facebook itself is pulling out from Metaverse as well, right? But I see a great potential that still exists in this space, and we're here to tell you about it.
All right, cool. So I think one of the questions people have asked me about in this field is, what is exactly the Metaverse and what can it do for me? So I think depending on where you're coming from, if you're a consumer or a business, I've seen quite a bit of investments into Decentraland and Sandbox. They've been buying lands and all that. Even banking institutes are going in to experiment. However, it seems like they're not getting a bit of the returns because the users are not fully returning back all the time. So concurrent usership is one of the main challenges, and so I think for me the Metaverse needs to evolve a little bit more. In some areas, more like gamification, and not just playing games and all that, but a little bit deeper that involves some challenges. And also, I think if we could connect the real world and the digital world, there will be some interesting use cases. Example like getting offers, discounts, etc., and all that. Working with advertising and sponsorships that will result in direct benefits in the real world. Possibly there are some interesting use cases, and so I think Metaverse itself needs to also take into account the onboarding of new people coming in. Some of it you need to understand about the wallet, the connection and all that. Let's try to find a way to do away with that and onboard the next generation of mainstream users.
Right, so maybe I can tell you about the original Metaverse applications or the projects that I was involved in. So the very first one that I got involved in was a environment where they created a user toolkit, and anyone who knew how to do basic HTML5 coding could use their toolkits and create their own Metaverse, meaning that you can create an environment where you can link different content and even Ethereum Foundation, right? We talked about Ethereum just now. Ethereum Foundation actually had one space as well, and they had LV, and they had Ford, and even Ford, you can see a car, you can rotate, you can move around in it, right? So that was 2017, and today those are even stronger applications that have been developed out. Another project that I got involved in was a game, right? So it's a Metaverse game, a VR game. So put on helmet, headset, equipment, took a gun, went around shooting zombies, right? So there are cameras inside the room. Then there was another project that was a listed company from Germany, and it's still around today. It's still on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. And what they created was a celebrity-led kind of a VR environment. So the founder of that company was actually a very big football agent. So he got Bayern Munich stars like Cristiano Ronaldo from Real Madrid, the Real Madrid team to come in as well, and they put their avatars And they even had like sports stars, like a famous German table tennis player, and they could capture his image. And that was also playable. So they had the sets, and you can play the games with your favorite star, right? So that's another application. And this founder also had adult entertainment applications of virtual reality. So that's another of the lines or industries that metaverses, VR can be used for. Right, so those are just some of the early examples. What we are doing today, 5 years, 6 years from when I first got into the space, like Alvin said, and in fact he was mentioning earlier, so he's the CEO of a company that does digital twins for environment. Now, environment is only one of the aspects of Metaverse, and their aspect is to create hyper-realistic digital twins. For example, they've already done a proof of concept for Singapore Land Authority, and in fact, a lot of governments, a lot of authorities, a lot of government agencies, large enterprises, developments, building owners, all want these, right? Because then they can put it onto a platform, and people who are not even in that space can consume content. They can navigate, they can see how it is, and they can build further applications on it. And just a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to a robotics company, and they are doing mobility robotics. And what they do is just capture the space and scan everything so it's hyper realistic. So it's very useful for developers, contractors, quantity surveyors to measure the progress of a building, and also for the development owners and the building owners to actually create these metaverse spaces to allow their customers or visitors to interact with these. Maybe Alvin can also give further insights on this.
Wow, thanks for talking about my project. So so for me, when I started out the company, looking into metaverse, I see that there's a lot of common problems in terms of trying to get user traction, getting the consumers on board, and everyone's like trying to sell land and all that. So I was looking more like what else besides the consumers that we can bring value to. And so I started on the path of looking into using the metaverse, especially the digital twin metaverse, to help governments and enterprises solve problems. So I think going forward, one of our strategies would be to also adopt AI. So one of the idea is to use computer vision to help create 3D models of the real world faster. And of course, train the avatars on the client's knowledge base, so that these avatars can be 24 hours, could be multi-language, and it's definitely a lot better to engage with the end users. So that's mainly the area that we're focusing on, and eventually we'll want to democratize the metaverse development, so that you can have a platform to easily create environments and avatars using generative AI. Yeah.
Right. So let me cover some more applications, right? Because we are all about applications. If you create a technology and nobody uses it, then it's no use. And it brings to mind an interesting article about, I think, Decentraland or the Sandbox, where there was an article saying that there was only less than 100 people inside interacting at one point in time, at any point in time. So that's very, very small adoption, right? And that doesn't bode well for the industry, which is why actually a lot of the large players have started to scale back a bit from this. But anyway, there are a lot of applications. Like for example, I remember that early last year, there was a article from KPMG that they spent $30 million to build their metaverse. And when I look at the metaverse, I hope nobody from KPMG here, but it was terrible, right? It was something that's 15, 20 years ago kind of technology, cartoon stick figures, and they expect their customers and clients to actually use it, their own staff to use it. So I think that was a lot of wasted money. But why I'm mentioning it is because another large, a very, very huge major financial institution actually started talking to us and said that they wanted a hyper-realistic, very high definition kind of a metaverse, so that their customers can do their financial services engagement with this. And now we are also talking to banks, and a lot of the larger banks recognize that they are losing touch with the younger generations. So they are viewed as very traditional, stodgy, conservative, boring. And then the new generation, millennials, don't want to bank with them. So what do? They come up with digital avatars, they come up with metaverses, come up with environments where they can create banking halls. Like for example, HSBC, PwC, they have spent millions of dollars buying plots of land in metaverses in order to engage the younger community. So it's not a matter of just making money from it, but it's a window to recapture that kind of environment. And in fact, earlier Alvin was mentioning about AI. So this is something we are getting into for a separate project. We are injecting AI into different verticals, but it's also very applicable for the metaverse, because with a metaverse environment and digital avatars coming on board, infused with AI, then a lot more things can be done, right? So eventually, I think we are all moving towards what the movie Ready Player Go is actually envisaged, and we are moving there. And I remember I was consulting a bit for Sony as well, and they were asking, what are the various applications. And I said, people like Apple, Facebook, Sony, if they concentrate on what they are good at, which is deploying large amounts of capital for R&D, they can own the hardware area, right? Because the software, the applications are so fast moving, it's very hard to compete with everybody. But if they just concentrate on the things that have very high barrier of entry, own the hardware, which has to keep improving, right? Then eventually it will improve to the stage where we are able to get into the metaverses without so much hassle. Right now, the barrier to entry is very high. It's very hard for people to get in. Like for myself, I bought an Oculus, I think one and a half years ago, and I hardly ever touched it, right? Because there are so few applications in there that you can actually use at this point. And of course, you get dizzy if you spend too much time on the headsets.
Yeah, on that note, I think Apple will be launching their VR glass very soon. So we are also kind of preparing our own library of 3D assets to start developing on that platform. And I think some of the other use cases, besides, I've been talking about enterprise use case. So for personal use case in terms of metaverse, the metaverse could be a private metaverse. It doesn't have to be like a public one, where you and your family members can be inside. And the avatars that are inside, you can actually train them with your social media, with even your speech, sound, and all that. And technically, it's getting a bit Black Mirror, meaning that you could immortalize yourself in the metaverse. So long as the metaverse is there, if you train your avatar to be like 60-70% sounding like you and thinking like you, that's another whole realm of area that you can, it's definitely within possibility as well. So one of the areas like the grieving market, you could metaverse your pets, you could send videos and photos, and then the AI could replicate its animations and its sounds and all that. And yeah, so there is definitely an ethical kind of question, and so that's how brand new technologies like AI and metaverse, when they combine together, it will definitely bring out a lot of ethical questions whether we should do it or not. It's like the movie Pet Cemetery. So yeah, so that's a lot of interesting use cases.
Right. Other things like fashion labels, for example, like Louis Vuitton or Dolce & Gabbana, they were getting into this space of NFTs and creating their metaverses as well, so that their customers can interact on another level. Earlier I mentioned, governments are getting into it. A lot of tourism boards are getting into metaverses as well, so that they can create a digital twin of their city. Like for example, Seoul, Singapore, Dubai. These are three cities amongst others. They are already developing a digital twin of their city, right? So that tourists can come in, can navigate, can find things, right? So eventually we'll see a lot of different contexts. And one of the metaverse projects that we're involved in, we've been working on it for the last 1.5 years. It is a reimagination of how people interact. So we know that everyone has different levels of comfort with technology, right? Some people just want to see their phone and do, let's say, WhatsApp, WeChat, communications. So that's a very Web 2 kind of an interaction. So in the Web 2 space, a lot of people are already very comfortable with the internet and tools and apps. So we have to move these comfortable millions and billions of people onto the metaverse, where there are only 10, 20 million worldwide who are actually using it. So there are hybrid models. Earlier you saw some slides from the doctor who was mentioning. So you have the Web 2.0, you have Web 2.5, which is a hybrid model, which I think is what's going to be useful right now. And then eventually there'll be a decentralized, open peer-to-peer kind of a Web 3.0 network. So I'm actually also from Asia Blockchain, Asia Web3 Association, and we believe that more and more technologies are getting in the Web3 space, and metaverses are one of those very big environments over the last 1.5 years that have been exploring Web3 interactions. Right, so this project that we're working on, it is a combination between Web 2 and Web 3 and a hybrid model. So how we onboard people who don't know crypto, who don't have a wallet, don't know how to get their fiat monies into crypto, we use middle layer platform providers. And so what we can do is to create just email and user accounts, and you don't even need to have your own wallet. You don't need to have your own MetaMask or your Ledger and your centralized exchange wallets. You can create something that's linked to your username, to your email. And this allows us to bridge the gap between the Web 2 and the Web 3 users. So another very simple example of how you imagine this is the internet, right? Like almost everyone here, or probably everyone here uses the internet, right? You use your mobile, you go on the desktops, and you get an internet. But I would say less than 1% of the people would actually understand how the internet works, right? If I ask any of you, how does the internet work? I don't think I will get an answer here. Maybe in a telecoms conference they will know, but probably not here, right? But you're using it. So eventually, 10, 20 years later, everyone will be using blockchain applications. A lot of metaverses will be used, but you don't really know how. You don't even need to know how, because that's something that the middleware, the middle layer platform providers are making it so dumbed down and easy that we can just use it, right? So I remember back when I first started in this space, 2017, 2018, we went to Korea, and at that time, Bitum was the biggest exchange before Upbit took over. And how Bitum actually reached out to the normal people is very simple. They just had one big red button, press and you can get into crypto, right? So all you need to do is that, right? Make it so easy for people to get in that they don't even need to know all the background layers. So this is what builders like Alvin are creating the environments, creating the platforms, the tools to make it easy, seamless for the people to get into the space.
Yeah, I think our time is up, but I just want to leave with this thought. So if you imagine you have books, you have magazines, and then now you have videos, you have YouTube, you have social media. These are all mediums to communicate. And next, what you're going to have is experience, and which is what the metaverse is going to bring next. So it's not a trend, it's coming. Thank you.